Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert
and Ryan.
And today we'll be discussing the season finale and the half season of Book of Boba Fett.
I mean, we're going to talk about kind of the season as a whole now that we have the whole finished picture.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So let's waste no time. Let's jump right into it. Ryan, what was your impression of, let's say, the finale and then the show as a whole?
I think the finale delivered what I expected and kind of what I had hoped after the prior two episodes. So we haven't talked about the prior two episodes on this podcast. You and I have talked about them outside of it, and how episodes 5 and 6 are barely even have Boba Fett. Like he's like a featured, like he's there, well, only kinda. They're the Mandalorian. It's kind of like an extension of the Mandalorian. Season 2 2.5 is what a lot of people have referred to it as. One of the episodes was just the Mandalorian, but I had the feeling that it had a reason behind it and that it would pay off to the Boba Fett story in the final episode, and in my opinion it did. And so, but I know that you were a lot more critical of those two episodes in the larger Boba Fett narrative, so I'm much more curious to see how this episode landed for you.
The season finale was somewhat what I expected. I mean, I think it was a lot of what I expected. There are quite a few things that were foreshadowed. Nothing really took me by surprise here.
There are things that took me by surprise. There's one thing in particular that I kind of forgot about.
Basically the finale was pretty good. It was all right. It had cool moments. But this show overall is just like quite simply not very good. I believe, in my opinion, as a, it's the story is just, I find it to be pretty weak. And this show is really just carried by characters we like and cool moments. And not even like necessarily the characters we like doing significant things as characters, but just like existing and having already been characters that we liked. And yeah, I'm prepared to provide my reasoning for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what grade would you give the show as a whole, the season of the show? I don't know if it's going to come back for more. I feel like it gave a bit of a tease that it could. But
I'm sure in The Mandalorian, we're going to see stuff from Boba Fett. However, I don't see why we ever, like, with the ending of that, why we ever need to see anything of Boba Fett other than him shown in The Mandalorian, basically.
But then, if the show only got one season, then I feel like a lot of the criticisms that you're going to make are made more valid because... Well, let's get into your criticisms.
Yeah. So let me say my first thought, again, I'm in a really critical mind here, and maybe I'm hoping that like talking with you will improve this, but I'm feeling like C+, honestly, maybe B-. Like, again, there's just enough cool stuff going on, and it's like an okay enough story that I, maybe I'll give it a B-, but like really it's because it's almost something like, I think I had the same sentiment for another show or movie, but you have enough ammo here, enough good things to use that it should be very easy to have a really good show. And like, instead of having a really good show because you made just a solid story and have good characters that we all like, you made a not very good story and use those characters to make it basically decent and just added cool moments. And that is what I simply believe, that this show is a weak story with things that the writers were like, it would be really cool if Boba Fett rode a Rancor and like fought a bunch of guys. It'd be really cool if Mando showed up and blah, 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 blah. And that's how it feels like the whole time, where it's like, of course there's a story that's kind of happening, but like in the first half of it, it doesn't feel like Boba Fett as our protagonist, right, is moving the story. It kind of feels like things are moving around him, other than his backstory, right, which is supposed to be background to what the current events, like what is the present day, right? That's supposed to be just giving us more information on how he got to where he is. But it feels like for a long time he's being moved by events happening around him, not moving the story, which is like a telltale thing of like weak protagonists. Uh, and just in general, I basically said, I think in the last one that it felt like they weren't making him very badass. And by the end, we finally, the thing about the season finale is that we do finally get some badassery, like some true Boba Fett just absolutely ripping shit up. Him and Din Djarin, like just, again, that was such a cool scene that it, carries so much, right?
Yeah.
That we just got to see them just, surrounded by enemies, just tearing them down and stuff. And also see, not to say that they can't be infallible and totally unstoppable, that we see them, being beaten down a little bit, not giving up, working together. Like there's a lot of cool stuff there, but the show overall just crushes on things like that, like having that awesome scene to literally just have Cad Bane walk up and reveal a secret that he didn't need to tell at all.
Thought that was dumb.
It was so like this buildup, right? We see what they were building up there, and for the way he finds out for Cad Bane to just tell him is so weak. It's just like the writers couldn't find a more creative way to let him find out.
I feel like the thing is he would not have found out any other way, and I agree. I thought it was weird in the moment. The caveat, the excuse that I will give is that I think Cad Bane wanted Boba Fett to fire off on him so that he could kill him there. I feel like Cad Bane felt like in that moment, like he wanted Boba Fett to just like play his hand too quickly, draw him out. And he had that as a bargaining chip because he knew that Boba Fett did not know about it and that there was no way he would have learned other than by him giving that information, and that he, based on his past with Boba Fett, he thought that it would have triggered him and got him to fight then and there. He even called him weak, like as to try and belittle him, but really that was further trying to coax him to lunge when he knew that he was in a position of weakness at that moment.
Yeah, and I understand the intent there. However, I also don't even consider that a moment of weakness. Like that's before they've enacted any plans to like take over the other guys. When he's like, "Oh, I've got backup too," which he's got a couple, snipers out there, but Boba also literally is being backed up by two highly skilled and dangerous and like renowned. Like Cad Bane should just know who those are on sight, right? So I don't know how Cad Bane thinks having two like regular guy Pike, I mean not regular guys, but Pike Syndicate, guys with laser rifles are okay enough backup. Even though Cad Bane's a badass, he is a total badass.
Yeah,
and I know he can think his skill is better than Boba's. But if you think his skill's better, even significantly better than Boba's, is it significantly better than all three of those bounty hunters when your only backup is just guys with laser rifles?
Yeah,
knowing Ben Shan's an expert sniper, and Din Djarin literally has the same laser-proof armor that I don't
like I said. All in all, I think it was weak. I thought it was weird that he would say it there, but I think the only excuse that I'm willing to give is that Cad Bane was trying to elicit an emotional reaction to make him make a mistake. Even if it wasn't there, Boba was going to be triggered to start thinking more emotionally, and I could see that being his reasoning. But overall, Cad Bane's whole use in the 2 episodes he shows up in is pretty weak. Pretty weak way to kill off this character with such that a lot of people probably have like some level of attachment to, because they've seen this character for years, and to know that he dies off like randomly working for the Pikes and taking a stand when he really could have just left. Like he saw at that moment, at the point when he squared off with Boba Fett, it looked like the Pikes were losing. He could have just left.
So yeah, that's pretty much, I consider it to be absolutely right? Cad Bane, amazing character. Now, the exact thing that happened when they fought and he died was not actually a terrible moment, I think, in and of itself, right? But what we miss is the significance of what is tried. They try to communicate the significance of that moment by a short conversation they have right before it happens, right? Which we basically get in a few sentences. We get Cad Bane basically saying, "I knew your father. I've known you for years. We have maybe been at odds before. I've stolen bounty. Like, we get a whole bunch of like exposition that they literally just say, right? And so in that short amount of time, we are supposed to, as an audience, which if you've never, we can't rely on people to have always watched every part of Star Wars, including Rebels and Clone Wars,
especially not Clone Wars.
Yeah, exactly. That's not
And
like
Rebels, yeah.
it gives you a ton of background, and you are missing something if you haven't seen all that. But like, those are things that are skippable. It's 7 seasons of a animated cartoon. If you don't know that, you don't have the significance of Cad Bane, right? So to try and communicate how significant he is in literally just a couple sentences. Other than that, he just looks cool. Like he is an imposing force to just even show on the screen. And so someone can be like, whoa, what a badass. But we're missing all the significance of the history that is communicated in just a few sentences. Here's where I'm going to make some of my first points of how them including these literal just Mandalorian episodes in the middle of Boba Fett was a huge mistake. They could have spent those episodes laying the groundwork for Cad Bane more and creating the significance of Boba and Cad Bane, giving us just literally like minutes more of history and even maybe a face-off prior to this moment that would have made this moment more significant. Now it might seem like he died like in a really simple way.
What we could have here's a quick thing. What we could have had is when Boba Fett had his random flashbacks to what's it called? Not Coruscant, the clone planet. What's it called? What's the clone planet?
Kamino.
Yeah, when he's having flashbacks to Kamino and like the last time he saw his father, which never pays off in the narrative. If those flashbacks at that time could have been flashbacks to him as a child in the bounty hunter stuff, maybe show, because they didn't want to reveal Cad Bane. That's the thing. They didn't want to hint at Cad Bane until they showed him, because they didn't want to like. They wanted it to feel big when it happened, kind of like saving Kingpin for the end of Hawkeye. They didn't want to tease too much of him before it meant something, but without setting it up, if you don't know who he is, it was kind of meaningless.
But they didn't. So here's the thing: is what you're referring to there, like just with what you said, and I understand kind of what you're getting at, but. They didn't tease anything about Cad Bane, and his appearance for some people meant nothing.
Yes.
Like, for people that know who he is, it was really cool. But a lot of this show just feels like they shoehorned in tons of things to just make stuff happen, right? Oh, we're just going to get Cad Bane because he's like a character from the things, and it'll be like whatever. But like, did you know? So I saw this as like I think it was in the comics or like a Legends kind of thing. But apparently Cad Bane learned from Jango Fett. He has a history with Jango Fett learning from him, and that's why he employs some like Mandalorian type things, like having a flamethrower and whatnot, and like having jet boosters and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that was some. I mean, the fact that I just happened to see like a like a YouTube short that told me that was like, wow, that actually gave me a little more significance, right? Yeah, I know that, but nobody else does.
Yeah, that's not even animated series thing. I feel I don't. Yeah, that's not something I was aware of.
Yeah, that's just some extra thing I saw from like a short.
Does it make sense because they were bounty hunters at the same time? Yes.
Yeah, totally.
But it's not something. But I feel like I did kind of get that he had a history with Jango from what he said, though. But I don't know what the history is. But I feel like you telling me that didn't make the relationship seem more interesting. Yeah, but I didn't need that for his character because I already knew that his character interacted with Boba.
Yeah. And so knowing that little point, right? They could have co-opted that piece of like existing thing, which they clearly referenced that he knew his father, right? And in those, we already have flashbacks as a thing in the series, right? You want to give us some cool background? You show Cad Bane in episode 4, okay? At the end of that episode, we don't need to spend all this time with Din Djarin, right? We spent an entire episode literally not pushing for Boba's story at all. And in that episode, instead of doing a bunch of unimportant Din Djarin stuff, which again, hey, I like Din Djarin. Let me just say this right here. I love The Mandalorian. I have said before that The Mandalorian is the best Star Wars anything ever made, okay? This has nothing to do with me saying that Din Djarin's not. I don't want to see Din Djarin. I love seeing him in The Mandalorian. I would have loved to see him as a character in this show too, but giving Boba Fett's show 2 episodes of The Mandalorian takes away from what's in The Mandalorian and takes away from the band Boba Fett.
Okay, so
and so let me say, in those episodes, they could have, with the clear, amazing technology they love to premiere with Luke Skywalker, of really making a totally different person's face look like Luke Skywalker, they could have made Tamora Morrison look like his younger Jango Fett self and have literal flashbacks of him, of young Boba Fett, like seeing conversations or training with Jango Fett and Cad Bane and how he has a history with him. We could have gotten things that were actually relevant to Boba Fett's story and continue making the doing that would actually make using the flashbacks make more sense, right? We're getting background continuously, and they continue to use that mechanism, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for. They use flashbacks throughout the story to give us background, right? They already did it, but they just decided, okay, we finished telling the story, we needed a flashback, so we'll just stop using it now, right? But they could have used it in more creative ways. They use that thing in a purpose. We already talked about the flashbacks not being very well done, or like they weren't necessary. They could have been just done in chronological order. But if you're going to use flashbacks, then use them to give us information, again, that becomes relevant to what's being told right now, right? Cad Bane shows up. Nobody knows who that is, right? Give us a flashback that shows us Boba having history with Cad Bane.
Here's the thing, though. I feel like because we know that Cad Bane is the thing, it feels wrong to not give him all this extra information around him for the audience to know. But quite frankly, I think if you don't know anything about Cad Bane, he looks like an intimidating, like, bounty hunter, and they show off that he's a quicker draw, at least quick enough draw to kill Timothy Oliphant in his introduction, and they kind of establish that he's someone intimidating and he just serves. Like, if you don't know he's a significant character, he could just come off as looking like a cool guy that showed up in the last 2 episodes. And that works. I think it would work if you didn't know the backstory of it. I feel like because because I feel like his character, while it feels underutilized because I feel like people care about that character, I think he was more or less used okay. I just think it is a weird choice. Honestly, I feel like his placement is made worse if you know backstory on him.
Yeah.
And because he's treated so insignificantly.
Yeah. And
so I get that.
I totally agree with what you said, that he, without any backstory, is still like imposing cool force. He reminds me, using him is kind of like using Chrysanthemum, right? Chrysanthemum has some backstory, and he's like in a comic or something like that I don't have any background on at all. But Chrysanthemum still is just a cool looking guy. Like, oh wow, look at that Wookiee with, like, gladiator looking armor, and he's got these electric knuckle dusters. That, like, it's just cool. Like, you don't need to have a backstory to see that character and be like, wow, that's cool. However, there is something lost. There was lost opportunity in making Cad Bane a more significant opponent, other than just looking imposing and then telling us what we know immediately in the moments. You could have had a more nuanced and deeper story by making him, like, giving us just more background,
because he is the final show off. Like, it feels like it should be a bigger climax than it is, because he's not painted as the final bad guy. Well, I guess the final, he's the final thing that Boba faces off against, and he's not even the one to take down to kill the Pike guys. That's kind of a weird thing in retrospect.
Here's the thing: is that we have kind of mentioned before that I don't know if we actually said it in the last podcast, but we, off the podcast, had talked about how Fennec Shand is being underutilized. Yeah, I think that basically, like, the showrunners and writers were like, oh, we didn't really do much for Fennec Shand. We better just go make her do some significant stuff at the end of in the finale. We'll make sure that she's, like, shoots a bunch. She does all the things that she's skilled at, right? She just goes and, like, snipes out a bunch of people and kills them as an awesome assassin.
To be honest, though, I think because they used her exactly the way I feel like she's meant to be used in the end, I think they actually, she's kind of well represented. Like, she doesn't talk a lot, and she, like, didn't always have, like, a strong purpose in the governance, which at the end of the season, we get the little bit of dialogue between her and Boba. Like, they basically sign off that this doesn't feel like the thing that they should be doing, which kind of makes it all feel pointless in a way.
Yeah, I literally wrote a note down that says the dialogue at the end of this thing is the stupidest. Again, like the writers of the show are actually. I literally. I mean, I don't. If those writers ever listen to this, I don't want to be terrible, but you guys are awful. You're bad.
Jon Favreau, the writer and showrunner of The Mandalorian.
Bro, he did a bad job. Like,
Yeah.
this was a bad job. Like, Mandalorian, amazing. This, bad. Like, this is bad. Like, at the end of the Boba Fett, whole purpose, the whole time, right? He didn't even have a good reason to be doing it. He said, I think I'll do it better. And then when you finally succeed, right, after being terrible at actually like being a leader and daimyo, like any of the skills necessary for that, you use the skills you have to actually succeed. At the end, you're like, maybe we're not actually good at this.
Well, that you actually proved the point that I was going to make, that they're not very good at governance and stuff. They're good at battle. That's the thing they succeeded at. And that's the thing people are celebrating them for. And that's the one victory they really got. But the governance stuff, now that they're in a time of peace and they have no like villains to like go up against, that's when he's kind of having the realization of like, do I really just want to do this? Or was I kind of having a fun time in that battle maybe? And maybe that's where I'm better utilized there than I am walking around a city when there are people who maybe can do this better and like live on these streets, because like, and we got this sort of dialogue with him and his like workers or the mod people.
The mods, I think they're called. Yeah.
About him going off to the fortress, but they weren't going to abandon the city itself. And at that point, I feel like that was the first moment where I was like, oh, that's the perspective they're coming from. And they actually have a care for this city. And I feel like it signals that he's going to maybe leave it to them. And that's why I feel like this show really hinges upon getting more than one season, because I want to talk about the Mandalorian episodes, because if this is a one season show, those 2 Mandalorian episodes are kind of inexcusable because they take up like like close to around like 30% of the total show of the Book of Boba Fett and have nothing to do with Boba Fett. But if they're 2 episodes in season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, I think they execute what they're trying to do perfectly well. And I think they make sense in this narrative, because you have to get the Mandalorian, and you have to get Grogu, and you have to get his ship, and you have to get all these pieces to this place, but you don't want to speed through any of that Mandalorian stuff. Like, you have to have him with Grogu in this last episode for the reasons of how they play into the episode. And that's kind of what I was getting the feeling from the prior 2 episodes, that the stuff that's going on is going to tie in to the last episode, and Grogu is going to be in the last episode involved in the battle somehow. And that's what happened. So I feel like in that way, those 2 episodes work for the narrative, because you need to, for whatever reason, I think it makes sense that they needed the Mandalorian's help with this. And you can't just have the Mandalorian show up, I guess. So
I've heard you say a couple times, have to. You can't have him just show up.
I will not. We've talked about this before. I will not accept that it makes sense for them to go to battle and not take one of their strongest friends.
I totally feel like it's fine that they brought the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
They don't need to have Grogu. They did not have to give us an episode to like justify why he's there. They can just like, literally, you could take out the Mandalorian episode and just have him be there and have him be featured in the Book of Boba Fett, and give us the opportunity to have questions of why, like, oh, what's Din Djarin doing here? What's this thing he's referencing, right? Like, give us little, things that make us look forward to the Mandalorian episodes that explain what he ended up doing there and whatnot. And you just don't need Grogu in this episode. He doesn't need to be here. And you might say like, oh, because they're to make them be together at the end so that when we start the Mandalorian, they're together. But the Mandalorian can be about how he comes back and chooses him. Grogu does not need to be here. Grogu calming the Rancor down doesn't need to be a thing.
Yeah.
Like it was a use of Grogu. It made him have a reason to be there and stuff. But and he also did save like Din, kind of saved Din by pulling a bolt out of the thing. Those are just things that like justify him being there. He does not need to do those things. Din Djarin could have, fought the tank and just beat it on its own and not have to rely on Grogu, right? But I understand maybe like I can understand the reasons like, oh, this is showing more of the symbiosis between them, how they help each other. I get that. Like I see how they make it useful, but we like kind of were getting some of that in the Mandalorian, and we could see more of that in the Mandalorian, right? The Mandalorian could take time to do that. We got that even from, it's already established that there's a little bit of symbiosis between how Grogu can use his force powers to occasionally help Din when he's in trouble. It's one of like it's like the second episode where that happens, where we establish that, so I think they take away from Boba Fett to set up for Mandalorian, and it's unjust, I think, in some ways. I as much as it's cool, again, like I still thought it was awesome that they got to battle together, but we didn't need to watch a whole episode to get Din Djarin there with Boba Fett. Literally, when all they had to do, like this is a potential, way that they could have done it a little different, right? Instead of Fennec Shand says, do you have enough credits? All right, I know, blah 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 blah. Someone that can help us. And then boom, we get the little, the noise, the indicator, like the Mandalorian sound that gave us the hint that we might see him. And then the next episode, bam, Mandalorian episode. Instead of bam, Mandalorian episode, we get Mandalorian stepping off of freighter or something, like how he arrived there on Tatooine. And then maybe you can even show us that whole scene where he shows up and is with I forget Pevi, or I think is her name. The chick with the curly hair that does the
mechanics.
You can give us actually that whole thing and then make him say where she says, "Hey, where's your little friend?" And he says he's got a blah 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 blah. Like he's gone now.
Yeah,
they can give us actually that whole scene and still like give us that, right, but make it like a little shorter. Like we didn't need to spend a ton of time on it, and make Fennec Shand or give him a thing that shows Pevi being like, "Hey, he actually just showed up here," And then Fennec Shand shows up, says, "Hey, we need you to do this thing for us, blah, 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 blah." And he's like, "All right, but I got to go do something first." And he goes to do thing, and maybe, we see the bundle. We see the bundle that looks like Grogu's head, and we're like, whoa, what is that? And then we have all these cool theories, and we can have all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
And Din Djarin goes to do something, and we spend the rest of the episode doing Boba Fett stuff, like watching him develop or do whatever needs to happen. That's all we needed, right? And then Din Djarin comes back, and he's there for, like, by the end of the episode, he's returned already.
Yeah.
And they're planning the defense, the assault. And then we get a more episode where he goes, like, you see how, like, we didn't need even a whole episode, and it's still significant that Din Djarin shows up. We can still just have him show up on the starship, and we're like, oh, dude, it's Din Djarin. Like, he's going to be the one that helps them. We just didn't need a whole Mandalorian episode to make it make sense that he was there. Like, he can just be there and then help them. And again, spending a whole episode to do Mandalorian just takes away from all the stuff they could have done to actually further Boba Fett.
I think you're right. And that's kind of where the crux of I think this show is bad if it's one season. I think it has promise if it's gonna have multiple seasons. And the crux of that really is that, like, I feel like these two episodes don't really serve Boba, and they really just kind of are more like teeing in and keying into a larger shared universe between the show and the Mandalorian, because the shows are like occurring basically within the same time frame. Because they're happening kind of concurrently, there's stuff that needs to be covered within one of the shows that the other show, like, because this is taking place between two seasons of The Mandalorian, for whatever reason, in Jon Favreau's grand design between the two shows, he's like, okay, this stuff needs to be happening right now before Din Djarin comes and joins this battle. And for whatever reason, they decide that it's important that this happens here in the middle of this battle, and that people know about it going into this final encounter the way that they decided that it happens. Because like things could have played out a different way. Grogu didn't need to be there, but they decided Grogu was there. And is that just because people like Grogu? Yeah, probably. But look, it's Star Wars canon now. That's how it happened. And that's not like the pure excuse of it all. But if this is just gonna key into the further story of the Book of Boba Fett later on, like this is all just set up to what he's gonna do past this, then I'm willing to sit and wait and give it the chance to pay off more about Boba Fett, because like straight up, if this is all we're getting out of the Book of Boba Fett, I'm kind of with you. This is bad. This does not talk about Boba Fett enough, and it spends 2 episodes on The Mandalorian. But if you think about it as an episode of Star Wars, like the shared universe between it and The Mandalorian, it's good. It's entertaining. And like those 2 episodes only feel weird because if you look at it from the prism of this is meant to be Boba Fett's shining moment, and this is his chance to get all of his backstory in these 7 episodes. But if you look at it as these 7 episodes that are largely focused more around Boba Fett and Boba Fett's goals that happen to intersect with this part of the Mandalorian storyline, which we need to cover so that it makes sense where he is, what place he is at in interacting with Boba Fett. But we don't want to, but this stuff that's occurring with Boba Fett, Mandalorian needs to be here. These things need to happen with the Mandalorian. So we need these episodes to show this prior to the Mandalorian's involvement with Boba Fett's little battle war thing. And we can't just give you 2 episodes of The Mandalorian to get that done. So we're just going to put it in the Book of Boba Fett because it's all just sort of part of this larger narrative across the 2 shows. The biggest criticism of the show is that it's branded the Book of Boba Fett, not that any of the storyline, any of the stuff that's going on is bad. If this is meant to be one contained narrative of 7 episodes, it's bad. If you look at it from the larger narrative of Star Wars, it's pretty good.
So I can understand that, right? However, I cannot. I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, I don't think any singular movie and or TV show justifiably can get away with saying, well, it's okay if you look at it in the grander scheme, right? Because all these TV shows released as they are as content are self-contained, right? Of course, they all fit in. All the Marvel TV shows fit into their grander scheme, and the Star Wars TV shows are fitting into the grander scheme. But this is kind of what we got at when we talked about this off the podcast, is that, so, I mean, and I try to make comparisons to, movies. I try to make comparisons to books, but we can take the easiest comparison to The Mandalorian, the first Mandalorian season. And you can include this in season 2, but the first Mandalorian season, an unknown character, multiple unknown characters, totally introducing us to new characters. Self-contained story. There was no necessarily hint that it was going to be all connected to different, key feature characters. I mean, there were hints and small things, right? And again, a character that nobody knows. He was cool. It was like, whoa, look at this guy with armor and stuff. But it's not literally Fennec Shand, Boba Fett, multiple named characters that all have backstory that they can rely on. It's a guy that we have to learn and be introduced to. And that first season, just in and of itself, not how it connects to anything else, is the best, in again my opinion, best Star Wars content ever made. Why could they not do a similar thing with the strength of multiple good characters and backstory that's already connected? Like, we're coming off of the end of Mandalorian season 2 and all the things that came from that, with strong known characters with great history. And why can't this story be good and so as a self-contained story and also connect to the bigger realm? And I think it's just how it was written, right? Yeah. There was so much potential. This is why I'm really critical of it, because I wanted this show to be good. It has so much potential, almost easy potential to be good. And that's why it's like for them to fail is, or like, in my opinion, to fail, to not really deliver, for me to even feel like this. Why do I even have any ammunition to make this argument? The fact that I have so many points I can make here is just, again, adds to my case that like I'm not like infallible here, but like that I am more or less correct. Like I have points here that are indisputable about how things were just not like very good.
And I have to agree with you on a lot of that stuff. I guess at the end, like the reason I made that point, that argument, is not so much to relieve the show of the sins of making a bad singular contained narrative. I can't take away any of that. What I can do is try to paint the show in a way that makes it more digestible and accessible and able to say that it's entertaining. Because if you're looking at it trying to get this show to give you the same thing as The Mandalorian, season 1 in particular, or either season, if you go into the show expecting something was as fresh and new as The Mandalorian in a show that's literally named after a character that's been around for decades, I think it sets up for failure to go into the show with too high of expectations and to try and look at it as this contained narrative, because that's what it may have looked like it was going to be going into it. But looking back, that's not what it was. That's not what the creators apparently had in mind when they made it. And that's kind of a messaging problem on their part. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it as just more Star Wars in the Star Wars universe, that's the best way to look at it, where you can leave the show and be entertained and happy about the things you saw. And I think I want to be happy with the show that I watched. And so that's why I'm looking at it that way. And I've like listened to some reviews of the show, and that's kind of the way the people who are responding positively to the show are looking at it from the mindset of, this is cool Star Wars. Is it focusing on Boba Fett all that much? Is it what I wanted out of a Boba Fett show? No, but it's still cool. It's still Star Wars. I'm still entertained. And it's not like the narrative going on doesn't make sense at all. And if you look at it in a way, the contained narrative of the show is like Boba dealing with the Pikes. Like, if you wanted to summarize what occurs in this show, overall, Boba Fett takes over, like Mos Espa deals with the Pikes and ends the spice trade and blah, blah, blah. And there's all sorts of ramifications that could be played out in another season that I would like to see. And I would like to give this show more potential in the future. I'm just trying to look at it in a favorable way, because at least the sense I get from you, I know like there are parts that you enjoyed, but you have left like the past 2 episodes largely negative. And I just don't want to look at the show from that way, even though I recognize issues and I see things that are wrong with it. I think with Star Wars, I've already seen the worst that Star Wars can be. And as long as it's not as egregious as episode 9 was in my eyes, I'm going to be kind of happy, and I'm going to just kind of accept what's given. Star Wars isn't perfect. And yeah, Mandalorian's the closest it's ever been or ever will be.
So Star Wars being beloved IP, right? That in some ways is just kind of a moneymaker, right? People that like Star Wars are just going to keep watching Star Wars and consuming Star Wars content, right? I'm going to keep watching Star Wars. I'm going to keep liking Star Wars, right? However, not choosing to look at Star Wars content and choosing to be okay with it because it's nice to have Star Wars content and it's nice to see characters we like just exist and do things is basically laying the groundwork for them to just keep putting things we like in front of us and not actually create meaningful stories thinking that that's okay. I think being very critical and holding them accountable to the wasted potential of the Book of Boba Fett, like, which is, that's what I'm doing. I want to point out like the things that are not good. If people enjoyed it, hey, I got some enjoyment out of it. I still generally am like, it's cool that I got to see Boba Fett do these things and see Din Djarin do these things. The episodes that I can't, that you mentioned I was negative about, I wasn't negative because I was mad that I got to see Din Djarin do awesome stuff, like Mandalorian cool stuff. I was mad because the choice to do it there diminishes the story I was hoping to see, which is just the Book of Boba Fett story. The story of how he takes over Tatooine, which is what we were hinted at and promised. Essentially, he goes to Tatooine, takes over Jabba's palace, and I want to see how that happens. I don't not want to see Din Djarin. I love seeing Din Djarin, but what I don't want to see is them give the story of this Boba Fett story that I wanted to watch over to Din Djarin so that he can later also have his own show, which I want to see too. It's unjust, and I need to point out the criticisms to hold the writers and accountable for doing a better job. I don't want, like I said in the last podcast, that Boba Fett feels weaker after watching those first episodes, and at the end of this season, I'm like, seeing he was a cool fighter at the end was like, okay, like that's good and stuff. But I still come away being like, Boba Fett has lost something by them giving us more, right? Din Djarin didn't become like worse as we got to see more of his flaws and things. He became better. Like, we could connect with him because he had flaws and he wasn't unbeatable and stuff, but he also had this great power. Boba Fett, like, somewhat from the story, did not become a better character, and it doesn't seem like he learned anything. I don't know that he grew and really learned anything. So like, and again, there's further reason for me to point out where he is moved by the story. He's not the one driving things. Like, literally, he's like, Fennec Shan's like, we need soldiers. We need to call in some people. Like, where was it? There was this one moment, I'm trying to remember what it was, where I think when they're doing the planning or something, he literally says, let's go to the palace. And then one of his lackeys says, no, we're going to stay here. And he's like, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's the point I made earlier.
Oh, you did? Yeah, okay, sorry. We went over
it was the mods.
Yeah, the mods. And that was like, okay, I guess Boba Fett doesn't run this shit. And if, and it's not to say like, oh, a leader shouldn't listen to his advisors, but it's like, it's I don't know. It seemed like, again, a weak moment. There's just been lots of weak moments for Boba Fett. And again, the failure and learning from that gives you the opportunity for growth. We don't want characters that are like totally unbeatable. I don't want that. I don't want Boba Fett to be the most badass, totally unkillable. Nobody can beat him. I want to see him be weak in ways, but not like be just like not a strong character. And I need to point out these criticisms. I need to point out how the show itself has failed in many ways to be good, because I believe that by holding this accountable, by making sure this message is out there, that it's not like they can't just get away with throwing cool looking stuff at us and thinking we'll be okay with that, right? Episode 9 is like, oh guys, Palpatine's back, and it's 1,000 Star Destroyers. And look, he does big force lightning, and that's not exactly the same thing there.
No, yeah, I don't even want to get into how.
Yeah, episode 9, cool Star Wars stuff, right? Wasn't it a bunch of cool stuff? Yeah, but that doesn't make for a good story, right? And we can't excuse. Now, I would say Boba Fett's got a better story than this episode 9 has. But literally, episode 9 is like, if we just bring back some cool stuff and make the stakes even bigger than 1,000 Star Destroyers that can all destroy planets, like. What? You can't just put bigger, cooler stuff in front of us and expect that to be an okay story.
I first want to get back. The beginning of that was you addressing that being critical is important to keep them from.
Yeah. So I'm digressing. Yeah.
And overall, but overall, I want to agree with that. That it is important to have critiques when critiques are valid. And the point I was more trying to make is that because I've agreed with all your critiques and I have my own critiques for the show. It's more, I would just hope that for your sake, you are able to look at it from the mindset, like at the end of the day, like when you go back and think about the show, that you can try to look at it from the more positive angle. It's like looking at the last season of Game of Thrones. Some people will never be able to get past the fact that it was done badly. And so it leaves this like permanent black stain on the show as a whole. Whereas I look at that last season and I'm like, yeah, that was bad, but there was enough things that were good about it that the whole show isn't ruined for me. And that's kind of the thing that I want to give, to try to put out there, to look at the show with a bit of rose-colored glasses, but still be willing to talk about, yeah, this stuff's bad, this didn't work. Yes, you're right. They could have done better. That's the point I tried to make.
I understand. Go on. Sorry, finish.
Well, yeah. And the other thing I want to address is something that came up to my mind when you were talking after that point about how it makes Boba a weaker character, and it doesn't serve Boba Fett. And I think another reason why I'm able to look at the show a little better is that Boba Fett as a character, I don't think has ever been good or interesting at all. And so the second episode of this show, where we get him and the Tuskens doing the very like Dances with Wolves like meets Dune plot, was, in my opinion, the best episode of this season, better than the one Mandalorian episode that was cool and nifty to see an episode of the Mandalorian. But I think the one episode with the Tusken Raiders is the strongest episode of the season, because it's the most interesting I think Boba Fett has ever been or will ever be. And you could argue that it's the one time where he wasn't letting the narrative drive him, because once he earned the favor of the Tuskens, we see he leads them to take down the Pikes that have been attacking them, and succeeds in the mission and gets that done. And is it kind of, does it take away from that episode that the very next episode the Tuskens die, and we see that the Tuskens were just there to try and motivate him later on? Kinda, but that one episode of Boba Fett was the best thing, was the most character to the character Boba Fett that I've liked, that I've ever seen of Boba Fett. Because in the original trilogy, he's a nothing character that people imprinted opinions on. In the prequels and in the Clone Wars, he's a little annoying kid. And in the Mandalorian, he is that guy from the original trilogies out of the pit, and we get like a generic idea. He seems kind of similar to Jango.
Yeah, I mean, and basically we just get the mysterious, powerful bounty hunter return, and so he maintains that mystery, which was always somewhat, his power. Is that, we didn't know a lot about him. We just know he was the best bounty hunter in the galaxy at one point.
And one thing interesting about the show is that we still kind of keep that mystery, because we still don't know who Boba Fett is in between the last time he's seen in the Clone Wars as a little punk annoying kid to the faceless, like nothing that he is in the original trilogy. That's still a big fat mystery to the character, that we don't know who that was. He is essentially like, and the show really kind of designates it as a rebirth of the character, him crawling out of the pit. He's becoming a new person at that point. And I think that's why they show that so early, that they want to get that point across, that this is the book of this Boba Fett, not that old Boba Fett. So if you have an idea of who Boba Fett was all those years, that's still there. He was still that guy, maybe. We don't know. We don't know who he was while he was the bounty hunter. But this Boba Fett is this guy. And he's a little older, and he's getting a little more moral. Like Cad Bane said, you're getting soft in your old age. And that's appropriate. That's accurate. Yeah.
So, I want to agree with you, right? That the Tusken Raider episodes are like some of the strongest episodes, like truly strong in like the actual narrative.
Episode. I don't think anything else involved.
I think there's some attachment to other points. Really, it's that I'm looking at Boba Fett as a character, and that Tusken Raiders episode and other portions, right? It's not to say some of the criticism I had about his weakness as a character have been completely all the way through, but basically like the Tusken Raider episode, him having all of his armor removed, so his imperviousness removed, and him having agency and driving forward all of those different points there. He tries to escape. He kills that thing and goes back with the kid instead of like, making a moral choice. He tries to help them. He like wants to learn from like he's doing, I mean, obviously some things are happening around him, but he's making choices. He's doing things. He is the person that moves the story along. When we're actually back in like the present time, it's literally like people coming and being like, oh, the mayor didn't send you anything.
Let's go to the mayor.
Yeah, let's go to the mayor. The mayor's like, everything's fine. Okay, I'll go back. An assassin attacks, or like assassins attack him.
Yeah. What
is going on here? Blah, blah, like Jabba the Hutt send another assassin after him. Like, it's just a bunch of like people doing things to him and him responding.
I agree.
That's not a good character.
And something that we didn't get to touch upon because we talked about the first 3 episodes and not episode 4, where episode 4 is where in the flashbacks we get this never really discussed, never really elaborated upon 5-year jump at some point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that off podcast too.
Yeah.
There's just like a general bunch of years pass by, guys.
Because as far as I'm concerned, the way that the narrative spins it, he is with the Tusken Raiders a week, maybe a couple weeks max. And then they die. And then 5 years pass and Fennec Shand shows up and he saves Fennec Shand. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Oh, and we got the mod guy. They paid him off by bringing him in at the end. And Timothy Olyphant, he's pretty much dead, but no, he's not.
Also not.
Yeah, we put him in a bantha tank, and
the modifier dude, the mod surgeon guy, is gonna fix him too.
So that's sorts of things.
Which is, I just want to say, like, is kind of cool, but also he just got shot like one time. I don't think you need to do surgery on him if he's in the back to tank, but whatever. I guess we'll just give him a robot arm or some shit, like whatever.
I think I called it bantha tank.
But back to tank.
Like a bantha.
Yeah, like oh my god, that's silly little meme thing. Like a bantha.
Yes.
But yeah, like it's. I mean, again, they're just gonna be like, "Ooh, cool Star Wars stuff. We're gonna give Cobb Vanth some cybernetics or something because we can."
Yeah.
Not because he wants to, because there doesn't seem to be any reason that you need to give cybernetics for a single laser bolt.
We need to set up Star Wars Freetown somehow, where Timothy Olyphant is once again a cowboy, but this time a cybernetic cowboy.
Yeah, cyber cowboy. Like Cad Bane's dead, so we need to throw in another cyber cowboy.
Yeah.
Man, there's like a lot I can say about the weakness.
So
I think I made my point really about like the weakness of the show and characters.
Normally we give letter grades at the beginning, and you gave yours as like a B- C+. I avoided giving mine because I feel like it was going to give away the fact that I kind of agree with you overall. Because I was like kind of teetering B+. And this is sort of confirmed to me that it's more like B- because the Star Wars stuff in it is still cool. That second episode, I think, is like a near A+ kind of episode. Like there's still the present day stuff in that episode that takes away from it. But I think all of the Dune dances with wolves, if you will.
Yeah.
That whole thing is some of the best. It's the best thing that happens in the season. Removed Mandalorian stuff is cool. But even the Mandalorian episode spent 15 minutes of him building a plane or building his new star fighter, whatever. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the Naboo one.
Yeah. So one thing I even just thought of right now, I was like, if you removed Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, Din Djarin, actually no, leave Din Djarin in. Take away Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. Make this some new standalone Star Wars story about the guy that took over Tatooine, right? It's not Boba Fett. It's not about Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Is this a good show still? No, it's really bad. Like, this is a terrible, this is not getting renewed for another season show. Because Boba Fett's in it, it's all more significant.
Yeah.
Like, and that, kind of just sums it
because
right
Din
up right
Djarin's in it, it's more significant.
Yeah, I haven't said leave Din Djarin in it, and this is still, like, this could be a show that, like, fails, but still moves the plot of Mandalorian forward, and it still was useful.
But I feel like if you only left Din Djarin in the same stuff that he's in, the show feels weird that you don't give him more of the show because he's, Yeah.
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 And then everybody goes, wow, this show is terrible. Why didn't you just make it an Mandalorian season or something? But yeah, that's kind of my point. I want to, the thing is, hey, we didn't get to talk about the Mandalorian episodes very much. So I would like to spend some time talking about those episodes. I mean, more in specific. And I have some comments I want to make about the finale. I have just a bunch of like literal criticisms and little things I liked about the finale because we just watched this. This is being recorded shortly after we watched
the same day that the episode came out, the Wednesday.
Yeah. So I had some like things I literally wrote down that I kind of just wanted to point out a little bit.
Go.
But also I would like to touch on those Mandalorian episodes. So let me do the finale stuff before we get to the Mandalorian episodes, since those are a little older and these are more fresh. Yeah. So my notes are really maybe just some nitpicks from the finale, but I kind of want to just address them, and you can maybe counter me or clarify some things. So one thing I wrote down was just really terrible tactical decisions during this thing. I honestly was like, did they think it was a good idea when facing a clearly superior force of men to position single individuals or I mean two? I mean, there's one that's a gang of people, so that's doesn't make that's not terrible, but to place literally one guy for a sector and two guys for a sector, two Gamorreans, one Wookiee.
I think the concept is that they were just look on the lookout for pikes. They weren't expecting to be ambushed by the natives of Tatooine.
That seems possible. Then why didn't they just, have the gang of like 15 mods potentially, have a few of them with the other guys? Like, you could spread out your forces a little bit so that, I mean, like, one guy could literally just be shot. I mean, again, another point to bring up is
you're not going to take down a Wookiee.
I mean, but why can't you if you just shoot him? Like,
we've seen Wookiees get shot a lot. I feel like there's something about them.
So this kind of leads into another point that I did write down, which was really convenient that, some of them, the ones that have only melee weapons, not only melee weapons, but are primarily melee or like one single guy, pretty much fight a bunch of melee guys. And the mods, those guys, the Aqualish, they all have laser rifles. They all have laser guns. But the other ones, no, just swords. Like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of just like, okay, whatever.
I can see that complaint for like a lot of stuff, though. Like,
yeah, sometimes it just doesn't make total sense that like someone would just exclusively have a melee weapon. Or I can understand the idea that maybe laser pistols are hard to get a hold of, right? So not every guy uses a laser pistol. That is totally understandable. But why is it that this section of guys all have laser pistols, but these ones have none? It would make more sense that there's like a handful of guys with laser pistols and more guys with melee weapons. That makes total sense to me, right? One's harder to get. But for just one group to have all have them, it doesn't make sense.
I feel like this is very much just kind of nitpicking.
Again, yeah, these are nitpicky things. Because this could another nitpick. Literal people running, like groups of people running from a thing that moves at the speed of a casual crawl. Like the tank, very imposing tank.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was dumb that it was able to catch up with them.
It's like showing guys like fleeing from it, but like, falling over and stuff. But it's just like slowly crawling along. There's no reason anybody shouldn't be able to just outrun it and get around corners and stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever, though, just has to serve the story. Oh, the tanks being devastating, yet it's stormtrooper-like complete inability to actually hit anything. Like, it's right in front of its enemies with the gun pointed at them and just misses multiple times. It's in front of a group of people. So there's like dozens of them all in just one general area, and it's just shooting the walls around them. Like, I don't think anybody actually gets killed by the tank. I mean, there might be like one or two, but like when they're, maybe, I don't know why they made this decision. Maybe they were trying not to be, extra deadly or something. But I felt like it would have been really cool to just see it like picking off people and just like, people dying from this super badass tank, when it was just like this tank basically, like, while it seems to do a bunch of devastation and destruction, actually achieves nothing. So whatever. I had written down here, Cad Bane just, decides to show up with no reinforcements by himself. I can understand he wanted to do it by himself. He's a lone guy, doesn't want to work with a team and stuff. But then just casually knocks Boba off the Rancor with a flamethrower. He's just like, flames. Boba doesn't do anything to stop him. The Rancor's just like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm just like, okay, whatever. I guess we'll just take that. King Kong reference, very clear Kong reference with the Rancor. I don't know if you caught it, but him climbing up in the tower and like leaning out and like shaking his fist. I was like, King Kong.
Yeah, I had heard in a review of the episode that apparently Dave Filoni is a big King Kong Godzilla fan.
Let's see. I did note dumbass dialogue at the end. Really, just terrible dialogue. Like
I don't think it was dumb. Because I heard another criticism of him basically saying that maybe we're not suited for this. I do believe that the experiences that they've had helped Boba Fett to realize that while he thinks that he wants to do good and that by running Jabba's empire in a better way, that's a way he can be a better person, that the experience of doing the battling and the whole thing made him realize that it's kind of not what he's actually suited for. It's kind of not what he's meant to be. It would be like an old Jango Fett, like turning good and then deciding to be a leader of something. It's just not in his blood. It's just not what he's built for. He could have had the intention to be into it because like that's where the power is. So you would think that that's something you want, but then when you're in there, you realize it's not what you want.
It's funny you would say an old Jango Fett when Boba Fett is an old Jango Fett.
Literally, yeah.
He is literally.
That's what. But it would be like if Jango Fett in his old age decided he wanted to start leading things. It wouldn't make sense for him either to actually enjoy doing that. Mm. And Boba probably only thinks that he wants that because he's gotten screwed over, or he does like Jabba's gone, and then the person that replaced Jabba is kind of worse than him, and he's just like, well, I bet I could do it better. And he kind of, in a way, did it better, at least than the last guy. I don't know how good Jabba actually was at his job.
I mean, he's eliminated the spice trade, so therefore making, he's the good, as I had seen in Screen Crush / Rants. I always read which one I watch with Ryan Erie. This would be specific on the one I'm talking about. He said something like, he's the good kind of a gangster because he doesn't sell drugs. And I'm like, yep. Yeah. I guess so. Like, yeah. Like every other kind of crime's okay. Like hiring people to kill other people, like no problem. Selling.
Well, no, spice is slavery. That's supporting slavery.
Yeah. Yeah. But the other kinds of crime are all fine. But drugs, and so again, slavery, it's indirectly slavery, right? Like by not buying the drug, you are not supporting the slaves. But what he said about not selling spice was it's killing our people, not they use slaves to mine it. So he was more like how drugs affect people.
But there are several levels of spice being morally bad.
Yeah, multiple levels. Right. But what we are told by the story that we see is that he is concerned about its drugs.
Yeah.
And so, he's the good kind of gangster because drugs are bad.
I mean, the Sons of Anarchy didn't like to do drugs.
Yeah, exactly. They're the good kind of gangsters, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I did also say, I wrote down, I was just like, why not lead with tanks? Why let like many dozens of your men get killed instead of just leading with the tanks and having them supported with all the guys? Again, they're not tacticians. They're not. I don't understand why you wouldn't lead with the impenetrable fucking tank things than your people. Like the bodies are more expendable or something. Just when there's a tank, all the guys just decide to stand around it.
Maybe it's because the tanks aren't very good at hitting targets, but they're hard to beat. And so they feel like using their troops could kill off more at first. And then like they're just left with less people to fight off these tanks that are virtually impenetrable unless you have some means of getting past them, their defense.
Except that you could send them with the tanks and the guys, and that would just be better overall.
Maybe, yeah.
But for the purpose of the story, we don't want them facing a literal army of guys plus tanks.
Look, I just lose. Honestly, I'm bored by any of the tactical things because there's plenty of TV shows that do dumb tactical stuff that people are totally fine with.
I get that, and like Star Wars, even in and of itself, is not like known for people making like legitimate tactical decisions. They pretty much rely on I hope I don't get hit, and I have plot armor, so I'll just run through fire and stand like within feet of people firing laser guns. I think even when we were talking about the Bad Batch, I criticized how like there were enemy droids standing like literally just like feet from the characters, just missing, firing at them, and when they're not even moving, they're just like sort of hunched over. So Star Wars is practically known for the things cannot hit, stuff, plot armor kind of.
Yeah. So if you want to make a broader critique of that as a whole in not only Star Wars, but other franchises that have this kind of issue, that's fine. But don't cite it as the reason Boba Fett's like complete garbage.
Oh, no.
It's true of everything.
I just wanted to nitpick things, or I was just like, well, and that this is not Boba Fett, the series is bad because of those things, because Star Wars does this all the time. This is not even that the finale is necessarily bad, because it's still, I mean, like, it's like whatever. You can just kind of hand waste on those things, but I noticed them was just like this. So those are some of my nitpicky things. We talked enough about the finale, I think, overall, and I picked a couple things. I don't know if you want to comment on the finale a little more.
The finale overall, I enjoyed it for what it was. Did it fix every issue going into the finale? No, but I was able to sit back and have a good time.
Yeah. Can I take a moment just to say that I've been super critical of the show overall and even the finale and pointing out all these things. However, I have enjoyed and been entertained by watching the Book of Boba Fett, and like, I don't want people to be like, this, like, my opinions, this show's trash, like blah, 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 blah. I just expect more and want it to be better and want to point out the things that aren't very good about it, and how I would hope that, shows like it can be better in the future. So I was still entertained, and like, I'm glad that it exists.
So I feel like I've sort of touched upon this idea as I've talked before, but something that I actually heard in another review of the show was that the series felt more like world building than it did crafting a narrative. And if you look at it from the perspective of the Star Wars franchise being built out and having like more details into the greater, I've sort of touched upon this already, but if you look at it the show was kind of being pitched one way and it ended up being something else.
See, now I while it does do something for world building, I think because I think they're trying to still craft a narrative for Boba Fett, and they also try to incorporate world building and moving along the Mandalorian plot, and they try to do they almost try to do too many things here, and that's maybe
that's
one
the
of the
problem.
weaknesses.
Yeah, there's too much being done.
Like what I might hope to see, right, from the Rangers of the New Republic, is like a lot of world building. Like, I don't even care if like we follow like a really great story, but like that's the opportunity for us to like literally have guys flying around in X-Wings to like different parts of the galaxy, and us just get to see all these different things. Like, that'll be a great opportunity to do world building. Here, I just don't think it was a thing they should have done really at all, other than just as a matter of course, like, doing things on Tatooine where we learn more about Tatooine. But
yeah, so we talked a lot about the Book of Boba Fett. Now let's talk about The Mandalorian, specifically season 3, episode 1, which is
which apparently is
takes place in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Now, so one thing that something that I heard described in a YouTube video that I watched reviewing the show and theorizing why they put it into this show was that if this episode was the premiere episode or if this episode and the following episode and like that whole arc of putting the two back together, if that was your episode 1 or episode 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, then it feels like the beginning of season 3 of The Mandalorian is undoing the entirety of what season 2 was, which was getting, I arguably season 1 and 2, which was just getting Grogu to the Jedi.
So they just said it was okay to undo everything that season 2 did in Boba Fett, and makes it okay.
But like if it had been the beginning of season 3, people would have been like, well, what was the point of season 2? But people are thinking about it being in the middle of Boba Fett, and like had that thought crossed your mind that this is their way of like softly resetting the status quo for Mandalorian season 3 without it being as noticeable because they're putting it in another place. Does that kind of make sense to you?
I do see how that is some decent reasoning. I understand that.
Yeah,
I still maybe have room to disagree, like how they didn't. I think that they could have done something similar, and it wouldn't have quite that effect. When you're saying that, like I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, well,
because we keep saying how we wish that this had been episode 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, but if it had been episode 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, like there is a point where it's like, well, he literally just gave him to Luke, and now the next episode of the next season, they're undoing it. It feels weird. But if you put it in the middle of the book of Boba Fett, then you get like 4 episodes having nothing to do with the Mandalorian before this gets brought up. And so your mind can kind of think, oh, while Boba Fett's doing this, Mando's doing stuff. So there's time passing right here before we get to Mando and Grogu being reunited. And it sort of tricks your brain into thinking that it makes more sense. And
they sacrificed Boba Fett to trick our brains to make Mandalorian season 3 a little better.
And maybe they didn't think that it would be as much of a sacrifice to the quality of the show as it kind of was. But that's another reasoning that you can put to basically like it's basically their way of like hiding that they just kind of reset the status quo of the Mandalorian going into season 3. But let's talk about the episode.
Freaking great, honestly. What an awesome re-entrance of, I mean, okay, the way that they did it, this being in the middle of Boba Fett, was like a wow, oh my god, Din Djarin entering the room, boom. I think we just get these episodes, I thought of this before. These episodes do more to further the Mandalorian in one episode than like multiple episodes of Boba Fett do.
I would say that it does more to forward the plot of the Mandalorian than a lot of episodes of the Mandalorian.
Absolutely. And it's, I think that might even be a point, is that I think what they do in that episode of Boba Fett, the Mandalorian episode, the mainly Mandalorian episode, is I think they could have not done things the way that they do it is done very well, but we could have spent more time. And in that case, like, I think they could have taken what we get through in the course of like 1.5 Mandalorian episodes plus like the finale, essentially.
Yeah.
And they could have extended that over maybe 2 to like 2.5 episodes of the Mandalorian and made it make more sense. Like the idea of like tricking our minds into not, feeling like that. They could have just extended the time of all that and made it make more sense about how Grogu comes back to him.
But maybe
further the plot of the Mandalorian with Mando not having Grogu, and give us some more background about why Mando misses Grogu, even though we do see it in the single scene.
I'm not giving this as a reason why. I'm not giving this as being a good reason, but I think the reasoning is that they just want Grogu to be their episode 1.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because that's he's not the star, because we love Mando, but he's kind of the star.
Yeah, which I think is kind of like, I guess it's like fan service, like make Grogu be in there. People might like the show less if Grogu's not there. It's
like you watch Pokemon and Ash Ketchum's cool, but Pikachu's where it's at. That kind of deal.
I do get that, except I don't think it translates directly, because in some ways I definitely think Pikachu is more iconic than Ash Ketchum, but I think okay, maybe that's just actually me.
Or Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, Pooh is the real shit, but even there, my opinion is that Mando is more significant than Grogu. Grogu is a cute little add-on to the things that Mandalorian does, and it's a foil in some ways. Like his seriousness is foiled by like the playful nature.
And that's
Grogu.
Because one of them is the human character that actually has stuff that happens to them and has plot, but they're still just kind of a person. Whereas the other thing is like this cute otherworldly thing that we can't experience in this real life that kind of encapsulates people's imaginations and hearts because it's cute and it just works. And they're kind of relying on that to help them through season 3 of a show that people are continuously hyping up. Mm-hmm. There is a bit of pressure put on a series when you get one season, great, this is the best Star Wars thing. Season 2, still great, this is still the best Star Wars thing. Going into season 3, that puts a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, really raises expectations. Like, I'm actually trying to lower my expectations for Mandalorian season 3.
I think Boba Fett helps to do that.
I think, yeah, Boba Fett helps to do that, and potentially it might be well served that they did end up doing this stuff with Mandalorian. Like, it might be well served that they sacrifice a little bit of Boba Fett to get Mandalorian in a place that they think is going to deliver a really good season 3.
That's the hope right now,
and that's what I will expect. But I'm lowering my expectations. I'm thinking, on the backs of what has already happened, it's going to be hard to top those things. Like bringing in a Luke Skywalker, him meeting up with Bo-Katan and Boba Fett. But how are we going to have that other than, like getting Admiral Thrawn or something in there, and Ezra Bridger. Is his last name Bridger?
But
Ezra from Rebels and like Admiral Thrawn, unless we throw some straight, heavy hitters like that, like we've sort of expended some of the like cameos and notable appearances that can happen. We could get like a Han Solo kind of thing too, or whatever, a Leia. We could get some of that, but it's unlikely at this point. It's going to have to stand on its own 2 feet a little more. And so I think maybe sacrificing Boba Fett a little bit to set itself up is what might be worth it. And if it is, then I'll look back on that sacrifice and be like, okay, well, I guess I can understand why they had to do that.
But yeah, so we were going to start on the episode. But yeah, the episode, the Return of the Mandalorian. Can I just say, you already gushed over how great it is. When the episode started and I saw his helmet, I just kind of had this smile that didn't leave my face until the episode ended. And once the episode ended, I was like, wow, that had nothing to do with Boba Fett, but I still loved it.
Yeah.
And which is a problem for the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But as an episode of television, what a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in so much like good stuff, like, like finding out more about how he's connecting with the Darksaber, or about how he's broken his code, and now how he feel like he have to redeem himself, giving us like a forward drive for him to redeem Mandalore. If I can only be redeemed in the waters of Mandalore and it's important to me, then I need to go do it. And
that's setting up our plot for Mandalorian season 3. He's venturing to Mandalore, and I'm kind of psyched about that. I want to see the resurrection of Mandalore and the Mandalorian people, and it's one of those things that I don't think is ever addressed in any of the sequel movies, what the status of Mandalore is, how the Mandalorians are doing. So there's a lot of potential for stuff we don't know about this planet. Things could happen that are restoring the civilization that was once there, or something else could happen. We have no idea, and it's promising and it's interesting, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I'm very excited for what those episodes set up, and they're so well. It's like, like Boba Fett's like cool in its ways, but like that episode of the Mandalorian and the Boba Fett is just done so well. I'm like, this is an episode of the Mandalorian. Yeah. This feels great. This is amazing. Yeah, I will say in the next episode where he meets up with Peli is her name, I think. The mechanic lady.
Well, that's in the same first episode.
I think you had mentioned. Oh, is it in that episode?
Yeah. And it's like 15 minutes of them building a ship that kind of didn't need to be there.
Yeah, that is, in my opinion, a part where we really could have like cut down on that. You had said that Peli is a really liked character, and maybe in the community, and so I get that maybe they wanted to give more.
Well, I just think Amy Sedaris is a well liked actress, and people are happy to see her.
Yeah, but I just don't know that it warranted 15 whole minutes. It honestly could have been done in 5 or 7 and still been charming.
And I agree with that. And I think it makes more sense knowing that they bring her back in the final episode of the season, but it doesn't justify.
Again, yeah, it doesn't justify spending that much time.
I bet at some point there is going to be time spent with him and the rebel chick that's cut out of the show. Mm-hmm. But because she's no longer his like close ally.
Rebel chick? You mean Bo-Katan?
No, the chick, the lady.
Oh, Ranger of the New Republic girl. Yeah,
who got canceled like in real life. I feel like she was his more. She played more of the closest ally to Mando prior to her being canceled in real life.
Yeah,
that I feel like she may have played a role here more, and he may have gone and talked with her, and she would have like helped him explore his feelings about Grogu. But that character has been removed, and no other character really serves that role anymore. As like, it's not like they're like best friends or anything, but they're kind of best friends. That's kind of the closest ally that Din Djarin has.
You know, honestly, you saying that really does make me think that it's very possible that she was the person that he interacted with, and that they replaced all the scenes with Peli.
I mean,
not to say that's for sure, but like I think that could be more logical that he would consult with her and bring her to this, you know, potential battle and stuff than Peli.
Yeah,
you know, which because they don't need to spend time getting him a badass starfighter. Like he could have just gotten any starfighter. Oh, you know, it's nice that it's a Naboo starfighter and we can nostalgia over it. And oh my god, you know, but like.
It was weird that they spent so much time on it.
Yeah.
It was unusual. Like I didn't understand. Like legit when he got there and she had the thing and I need to work on it. I'm like, cool. She's going to work on it. He's going to go help Boba out. And this is just going to be done in the background and be ready for him when he gets back. But no, then we watch him help build it for some reason.
Oh, I think you had mentioned something to me where I was like, there's even less reason for this. But you said, wait for the finale, see if it's important. Maybe he uses it.
Oh, no. You didn't use it.
Oh, it's not. It was actually completely purposeless to see all of that building it.
No, yeah.
Or even incorporate the starship at all. Like her mentioning, hey, I'll have this ready for you later is one thing, just to say this is how I get your ship later. But yeah, all of that is just, we're just spending a half of Boba Fett watching her do stuff.
Does it pay off when we get to see little Grogu asked to have the ship go zoom at the very end, which is the closing thing of the series, of course, is the Mandalorian. That's how the Book of Boba Fett ends, by showing the Mandalorian. Is that a fun payoff? Yeah, but it was weird.
Yeah, it's whatever.
So do you have any other thoughts?
You know, I think I got through my little list of things in the finale. I'm trying to think. There's an episode we haven't talked about, right? We
danced around aspects of the episode where we get Luke and Grogu doing the Force training. The effect is really, really cool. They've largely improved the effect. I've heard that they actually hired someone who basically saw the effect in the original episode where Luke came in and he was like, I can do this better. And they're like, yeah, you did do that better. Come and work with us. And it looks great.
It looks great, but I want to comment maybe another little nitpick.
His voice is off.
I'm not even too worried about the voice. I totally accept that they, you know, hey, Luke, even if they have this great technology, I don't expect him to be perfect, right? Because they could have just recast him, right?
Yeah.
They're using this awesome technology to give us his face, and I think that's really awesome, and I'll accept that slightly off voice. What I think they do way too much when Luke is there is just show him awkwardly doing moving and doing nothing and stuff. Yeah. And it's kind of weird.
It's hard to tell if it's weirdly written thing or if that's kind of makes sense for Luke trying to be the Jedi master that he has seen before him. Because you get the feeling that maybe he's trying to be like Yoda and trying to be like Obi-Wan, where they're just kind of stoic but he's not a master. He's he's a well-trained Jedi at this point.
I think he's considered a master. Even Ahsoka Tano calls him Master Skywalker.
He's considered a master, but there was no one ever to give him that title, and
he can give himself that title.
Yeah, I guess he can, but
Ahsoka Tano, who was in the actual Jedi Council, gave him that title.
Look, we know canonically, no, she's
Jedi,
she's not a Jedi.
Not Jedi Council, but who was a part of the actual Jedi Temple in Coruscant when there were ranks, calls him a master.
Yeah, but she's not a Jedi. But whatever. But we know that Luke failed as a teacher, and one of his pupils turned to the dark side. So we and I feel like that's one of the criticisms people have of The Last Jedi is that they don't like how they turned Luke into this sad, what have you kind of failure. But leaving Return of the Jedi, Luke has done great things and he's had great Jedi acts, but he was never really given his full Jedi training, and that was kind of made a point that he did not complete his training. And apparently around this time he's supposed to be teaching Leia too, according to The Rise of Skywalker. But Luke doesn't necessarily really know what he's doing. He's still pretty young at this point. And that's the sort of excuse that I would give to why he's just kind of being weirdly stoic, and he's like doing the frog thing, and he puts Grogu on his back to carry around the forest like he did with Yoda, which doesn't make sense because in that setting he was the pupil carrying his master, and in this setting he's the master carrying his pupil. So it doesn't really make sense as a one-to-one parallel, but I feel like Luke is trying to be like Yoda, and he's just not very good at it because he's not Yoda.
Yeah.
Which I think
in some ways might, commenting people saying like, oh, he fails as a teacher later. I'm like, maybe that's kind of part of it, is that he tried to be like his masters and failed to pass on the right lessons, even though the lessons he learned or like that he exhibited, right, were not necessarily things he got from Yoda and Obi-Wan, like things that he thought his father could be redeemed, right? They both were like, no, he's unredeemable. He was like, I sense the light in him. And so he made a decision counter to what they sort of counseled and was right for it. And like, Luke's understanding of the Force, I think in some ways was more developed than Obi-Wan's and Yoda's. But I think when he tried to be a teacher, he just tried to replicate them. And that was maybe his failing almost. Yeah. And that later he was like, I'm not going to do anything like that anymore because I failed. Like teaching Rey is going to be a totally different thing when he does decide to train her. Like the lessons of the Jedi are dead. Like
and when he's teaching Rey as Luke instead of trying to teach as one of his trainers. And that's why like lessons kind of get through to Rey better. Like he's not training her for very long, but things that he tells to Rey, I think sink through to her in a way that carry her through and allow her to resist the temptation that Kylo presents to her in that movie. Last Jedi, I think, is quite underrated in that. I think plenty of people like The Last Jedi, but I think there's more nuance to it. But getting back to this, when I was watching the Luke and Grogu stuff, I thought it was weird. At points, I thought it was boring. But like trying to look at it from the perspective of, man, Luke is kind of a weird teacher. And it's like, yeah, because he had two weird teachers and that's kind of all he has to go on. He was never part of the Jedi Temple or in Council. He doesn't really know what being a Jedi Master entails. He's just being told things. Maybe Ahsoka's telling him things.
Technically, we know for a fact that he recovers the ancient Jedi texts. So we know that he has.
But when does he have them right now?
That's uncertain.
Or were those texts on the hidden Jedi planet that he flees to, and so he never had them when he was doing his trainings? I don't know.
Does he say that that's the site of like the ancient Jedi temple there or whatever?
Well, it's like that's what it was, right? That's what I thought it was.
I think maybe, yeah, like that might. But I think he kind of. I could be totally wrong. Somebody that actually knows better, maybe mention it in the comments and correct us here.
But yeah, so that's the Luke of it all. Ahsoka shows up, teasing out that she's gonna get a show eventually. I'll watch it.
Oh, I'll hella watch it.
Yeah,
I'll watch the shit out of it.
Yeah, we want it. Give it to us.
We just gotta. Totally aside. Speaking of shows and stuff, Obi-Wan confirmed in May.
Good. About time. Let's get Mr. Ewan McGregor in our eyeballs again.
Let's go. Need it.
He is the age. He is now the age proportionate to Alec Guinness that Alec Guinness was in the original Star Wars, I believe. Like the amount of time passage from when he played Obi-Wan to now is roughly the same time difference of in the Star Wars universe of when Obi-Wan ended Revenge of the Sith to when he meets Luke.
How long has it been? Like what, 20 years or something?
Yeah, it's been 20 years.
Is it 20 years in
well, like so since Revenge of the Sith, I think it's actually been more like 16 years.
Okay.
So 16-ish years since Ewan McGregor last played Obi-Wan, we are now seeing him play Obi-Wan again. So he should be almost the age of Alec Guinness, basically. Maybe like another 5 years, because he has to be it's the amount of time since Luke becomes like 20 in A New Hope.
Man, you know, it'd be really awesome is seeing, even though it's been already represented in animation, seeing the live action Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul fight again.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I mean, not necessary because it has already been depicted. It'd be cool for a person that would never watch Rebels and Clone Wars to get to see it in the live action sense.
Is there some presumption that Darth Maul might show up in this?
Not necessarily, because it's confirmed in Rebels
he showed
that
up
he never found Obi-Wan before
until in Rebels.
Yeah, unless Obi-Wan goes out and finds him and they interact.
Yeah,
and it's never referenced.
But then
again.
that wouldn't make sense though.
Yeah, so.
But hey, Obi-Wan's got all sorts of other people he can find along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Captain Rex. Let's be honest.
Let's go.
We're gonna see him played by de-aged Tamara Morrison.
He doesn't need to be de-aged though, because Rex is old.
Yeah, that's true.
At the time of Rebels, when Alec Guinness or the representation in Rebels of Obi-Wan is also old, so he doesn't need to be de-aged. In fact, he needs to be up age. Boba Fett is younger than Rex.
Yeah.
So.
We're excited for Obi-Wan, excited for Ahsoka, excited for everything Star Wars they give us. Hopefully,
Boba Fett, happy it existed, but I expect
disappointed
better.
by the execution.
Yeah, I expect better.
Yeah, even the positive reviewers that I've referenced before, their final scores of the season were a 3 out of 5 and 3.5 out of 5. And they were just like, yeah, we enjoyed it. Yeah, and they like say all these things that they enjoy about it, but then like, well, this doesn't make sense, and that's weird, and all the nitpicking enough to like drive it down. But there's still cool Star Wars stuff here.
Yeah, it's cool Star Wars stuff, but like this is not a good story, and that's really it was not a very well done story.
Here's the thing: like if the MCU put out something with this many narrative flaws in it, people would like tear the shit out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people are a lot kinder to Star Wars.
They're kinder to Star Wars, and they're also used to, at this point, they're used to getting beat up basically by having their multiple iterations that are like, you know, major motion pictures that people consider not very good. So they're just used to like, Star Wars just sucks sometimes a little bit, but you know, it's always cool.
Yeah, sometimes Star Wars does suck.
Yeah.
But Boba Fett,
it's always cool.
Boba Fett's like on the higher end of the suck half.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really hope that Mandalorian ends up being really good, and still look forward to more Star Wars stuff in the future.
I do too.
So yeah. Hey, before we go, you guys should subscribe if you made it this long.
Yeah, we post videos on YouTube. We're on Spotify.
Yeah, we're bad at advertising that.
Apple Podcasts.
We should be smarter, and so maybe in the future we'll start saying that more. But yeah, help us out. Subscribe, like, share,
comment,
or whatever.
Email us.
The things, all the stuff.
Let me know how we're doing, how we can improve.
Yeah, Ryan reads it. I don't. So
I kind of read it. I mean, because we don't get a lot of responses, so there's not like I have not had the need to be attentive to it, because and I mean, like, hey, like as long as you're listening, I'm happy. But if you have comments or critiques or what have you, we'd love to hear it.
Most certainly. But yeah, thanks guys, and until next time, this has been Robert
and Ryan.
Adios.
Like a panther.